Hello and welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras, and coming up in today's newscast, the United States denying any involvement in the blast at the Natanz enrichment plant in Iran, as Defense Minister Gantz demands an investigation into all the alleged leaks coming from Jerusalem. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu still trying to form a coalition and to avoid fifth elections, but he's just not there yet. And finally, a guide to this year's Yom HaZikaron, or Israel's Memorial Day, complete with some very special guests. Now we begin today with Iran, the dust settling around the Natanz uranium enrichment plant, where an explosion has taken out the electrical grid, potentially shutting the plant down for at least the next few months. Iran, for its part, blaming Israel and vowing revenge for the apparent attack.
تمامی سانتریفیوژ هایی که به خاطر این اتفاق از مدار خارج شدند از نوع IR1 بودند. قطعاً همه باید بدونن که اینها با نوع‌های پیشرفته خودش جایگزین خواهند شد و این توان همین الان در جمهوری اسلامی در بالاترین سطح وجود داره که با پیشرفته ترین این سانتریفیوژ ها اینها جایگزین بشن. اگر هدف این بوده که در مسیر رفع تحریم های ظالمانه بر علیه ملت ایران خللی وارد بشه، قطعاً به این هدف خودشون هم نخواهند رسید و در این دام مکارانه‌ای که طراحی کردند کسی وارد نخواهد شد. باید بدونه که پاسخ ایران انتقام از این رژیم صهیونیستی خواهد بود در جای خودش و در زمان خودش.
Meanwhile, attempting to keep the now slow-starting indirect nuclear talks in Vienna on track, United States officials denying any involvement in the explosion, which anonymous alleged Israeli and American sources continue to blame on Israel.
In the attack?
Well, we of course have seen the reports of the incident at the Natanz enrichment facility. The U.S. was not involved in any manner. We have nothing to add on speculation about the causes or the impacts. I will say on your first question, though, we are focused on the discussions that we expect to proceed this Wednesday in Vienna. To the diplomatic discussions that have been taking place and took place last week. We expect them to be difficult and long. We have not been given any indication about a change in participation for these discussions.
Jerusalem, for its part, however, continuing to neither confirm nor deny the reports. In fact, apart from additional vows to prevent a nuclear Iran, which Israel has been promising for years, Israeli authorities instead turning their attentions over to all the supposed leaks. Defense Minister Benny Gantz calling for a high-level investigation, saying, quote, "I'm not talking about any specific operation, but I do want to address the issue of chatter. It's a severe issue, and I turn to the Shin Bet and the IDF's Information Security Department to open an investigation into it. We cannot operate when everyone is babbling. We can't accept these winkings and these, quote, Western sources stories. It harms our troops, our security, and the interests of the state." Now, we are 1 week into Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's mandate to try and form a government and to avoid fifth elections. But in spite of the ongoing and reportedly progressing negotiations with the various parties, Netanyahu is still far from the 61 seats necessary for a coalition. So what does Prime Minister Netanyahu have to do to clinch a deal? Well, most parties are still sticking to their guns from before the elections. Right-wing and Jewish Orthodox parties continuing to back Netanyahu, while the Arab Joint List and the left-wing anti-Netanyahu bloc still committing to Netanyahu's ousting. As for the parties on the fence, Naftali Bennett's Yamina party, for one, holding true to vows to work towards any deal that prevents another round of elections. Bennett saying that he now supports a right-wing government under Netanyahu's Likud if that's what it takes. But this only brings the bloc up to 59 seats, 2 seats short of the majority needed. And therein lies the biggest problem. Gideon Sa'ar's New Hope party still rejecting any partnership with Likud as long as Netanyahu is involved. And the Islamist Ram party, seen as one of the last remaining parties willing to sit in the government, now publicly refusing to give up on its anti-Zionist charter. And this making partnerships with Ram a non-starter for parties on both sides of the aisle. So in short, unless someone else breaks rank or unless Netanyahu steps down, Israelis can likely expect to return to the polls this summer. Now moving on to Yom HaZikaron, or Israeli Memorial Day commemorations. Today we remember the contributions of Israel's many service members while mourning the loss of those thousands who sacrificed everything in pursuit of our national safety, sovereignty, and self-determination. Commemoration ceremonies beginning earlier this week, showing solidarity with the families carrying the weight of their loved ones' legacies.
זיכרון הנופלים והנופלות הוא חלק מההוויה הישראלית בכל ימות השנה, ובימים אלו במיוחד. חילונים ודתיים, גברים ונשים, יהודים, נוצרים, דרוזים ומוסלמים, כולם קשורים יחדיו בשותפות גורל ושותפות ייעוד. וכמובן שגם אנו, חיילי צה"ל ומפקדיו, זוכרים את השמות, מותם שב ומזכיר לנו את משימת ההגנה שבשמה נפלו. ובה בעת, את חובתנו להשתנות, להיות רלוונטיים ולהתאים את עצמנו לשדה הקרב הנוכחי והעתידי. משפחות יקרות, אנו איתכן לאורך כל הדרך, כל ימות השנה, כי הקרבה והמחיר הכבד היו למען דבר שגדול מכולן, ההגנה והבטחת ביטחונה של מדינת ישראל. ויש לנו מחויבות נוספת עזה ועמוקה לבני משפחות השבויים והנעדרים. אנחנו אלו ששלחנו את יקיריכם למשימה שממנה לא חזרו, ואנו מתחייבים להמשיך ולעשות כל מאמץ כדי שישובו אליכם ולארצנו.
As for other ceremonies open to the general public, traditional annual memorial concerts, name recitations, and more popping up all along the country all day long, including many virtual events in light of the ongoing pandemic. And this in addition to the annual nationwide moments of silence, denoted by a 1-minute siren tonight at 8 p.m. and a 2-minute siren tomorrow at 11 in the morning. And now joining me with more on Yom HaZikaron, Vice President for External Relations at the IDC Herzliya, Jonathan Davis. Thank you so much for being with us. Now, you served in the Yom Kippur War in 1973. What are you feeling this year on Yom HaZikaron, especially as we start to exit from the coronavirus crisis?
What I'm feeling is that on a solemn day like this, the state of Israel, all of the people in Israel need to unite. And when we hear the siren tonight at 8 o'clock in the evening, we need to forget about our political differences, our differences in religion, economics, national characteristics of different people. We just all have to unite and remember that this country of ours was not achieved on a silver platter, and that almost 24,000 youngsters sacrificed their lives so that we could be where we are today. So that's the first thing that comes to my mind. The second thing that comes to my mind is my friends and comrades who were killed in action in missions before the Yom Kippur War and during the Yom Kippur War. So that's what really comes to my mind.
Do you have maybe a specific story from your service that holds particular significance for you on Yom HaZikaron?
One story which I have, which actually, in my view, deals with the unity of the Jewish people, happened to me because I was actually a lone soldier in a paratrooper reconnaissance unit, and I never really had a place to live. And the Ministry of Absorption, after a lot of nagging, found me a room in some kind of a tenement in Kiryat Yovel in Jerusalem. It was a building full of new immigrants who had just come from Georgia. And they came from a totally different way of life. So light bulbs would be missing in the hallways, and sometimes fuses in the fuse boxes, and sometimes there would be garbage strewn from the balcony onto my laundry. In the few days that I actually got to come back for a Shabbat or something like that. And so my relationship with the people in the building was not a good relationship. I was quite angry at the fact that here I had come from California and came from a different way of life, and these people came from a different way of life, and we were worlds apart. And then the Yom Kippur War broke out. And when the Yom Kippur War broke out, under who was then Captain Shaul Mofaz, we went very deep into Syrian territory, participated in missions which we could have easily not have come back alive from. And afterwards, we also crossed the Suez Canal and endangered our lives at the time. And I had literally left the apartment building for at least 4 months before I actually had a chance to come back. And I finally came back to the building, I think after 4 or 5 months when we got our first leave to come back to Israel from Egypt. And I come back to the building and I see that my mailbox has been painted red in a very rudimentary fashion. And all of the envelopes of my mail are like gooey and kind of like sticking together. And this is really aggravating because there were no emails in those days. There were no WhatsApps. There was only snail mail and airmail. And so there used to be an old man who sat in the front of the building, kind of like the godfather of the Georgian community in that building. He would be sitting there and drinking tea with Nana. And I think people used to come up to him and ask him for his advice. So I came up to him with my messed up letters, all full of red. And I said to him, look, what do you guys personally have against me? Okay, I can understand you've taken light bulbs, you've done this, you've done that. We don't get along, but now why are you singling me out? And he said, well, young man, you were the only person in this building who we saw had a uniform and we saw went to war. So we painted your mailbox red so that the angel of death would skip over your threshold, just like the story of Passover, that the firstborns of the Jewish people were spared. At which moment, I had a flashback thinking in terms of how many times could I have been killed in that war? And wait a second, these folks who seem so simple to me, okay, basically the blood that runs in their veins is the same blood that runs in my veins. And their Jewish tradition goes back for thousands of years, as does mine. At that moment, I simply embraced this old man and he embraced me. And I was thankful for being alive. And till this day, I'm not sure that if their little painting of my mailbox didn't have something to do with that. And the point of the matter was that from that moment on, the ice broke and I started becoming friendly with the rest of the people in the building. And I respected them for their Jewish tradition and for being who they really are. And it didn't really matter, okay, if I used to mow the lawn in my house in California or if we had better freeways from where they came from. In the end, that was the best lesson I could ever have received about the unity of the Jewish people.
Jonathan Davis, thank you so much for sharing that story, and thank you so much.
Thank you, and well over Memorial Day and after Memorial Day, let us rejoice on Independence Day and take this solemn day for the sake of unity. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Moving on, it's typical for Israeli commemoration events on Yom HaZikaron to include musical accompaniments, and at ILTV it is no different. Joining me now to speak with us then about their experiences as well as to perform a couple of beautiful arrangements, we have two very special guests, Rami Hoffman and Hagar Betzalel. Thank you both so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
So first of all, before we begin, your services in the IDF were a little bit more recent than some of our other guests, but no less important. What does this day mean to you? Hagar, do you want to start?
Can you ask again?
What does this day mean to you?
This is a very special day that all of us are putting the attention for all those soldiers and all the family who lost their closest people. And for me, when I was in the high school, I had a boyfriend which also died in the army. And since then, I think it was my first experience that I really understood what is it to lose someone so close. And I understand all the families who need to live with that all their life. And I wish it will, I mean, I hope we could stop it forever, but unfortunately, that's not the reality.
Rami?
Yeah, I agree that this is a very special day for all the people of Israel, I think, because we have a unique situation in this country that we live with terror and security problem, and we lost a lot of people because of that reason. I know my unit in the army, I was in the armor corps. I was a tank driver, My unit lost a lot of soldiers in the different operations, and like Agar said, we wish we can live without it and just make music all day. But this country have a unique situation, and we have special days like this because of this.
Well, first of all, I'm so sorry for both of your losses. This day hits everybody in this country differently and at the same way, in the same way. But I'll let you get, I think, to your first song then. This is To Touch the Dream by Achinoam Nini, again performed by Hagar Bezalel and Rami Hoffman. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
זה עבר, זה נגמר, קצה חלום ודי, כל הזמן שנשר בין אצבעותיי, זה עבר, זה נגמר לתמיד אולי, מעגל שנסגר ונשארת חי. ניפגש, נתראה, לב אוהב אינו טועה, כמו אל ים נזרום, נזרום, נבקש עד שנגיע וניגע אל החלום. זה עבר, זה נגמר לתמיד אולי, מעגל שנסגר ונשארת חי. ניפגש, נתראה, לב אוהב אינו טועה, כמו אל ים נזרום, נזרום, נבקש עד שנגיע וניגע אל החלום, כמו אל ים נזרום, נזרום, נבקש עד שנגיע וניגע אל החלום.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
I have to say, you know, the lyric that hits me the hardest in that is the circle closing, yet leaving us behind. And I think that that really speaks to this day. All right, well, I'm not going to take up too much more of your time. I'm going to let you go to the next song. This is Shema Yisrael by Sarit Haddad. Again, Hagar Bezalel and Rami Hoffman. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
כשהלב בוכה, רק אלוהים שומע, הכאב עולה מתוך הנשמה, אדם נופל לפני שהוא שוקע, בתפילה קטנה חותך את הדממה. שמע ישראל אלוהי, אתה כל יכול. נתת לי את חיי, נתת לי הכל. בעיניי דמעה, הלב בוכה בשקט. וכשהלב שותק, הנשמה זועקת. שמע ישראל אלוהי, עכשיו אני לבד. חזק אותי אלוהי, עשה שלא אבחר. הכאב גדול ואין לאן לברוח. עשה שיגמר, כי לא נותר בי כוח. כשהלב בוכה, הזמן עומד מלכת. האדם רואה את כל חייו פתאום. אלא לא נותר, הוא לא רוצה ללכת. לאלוהיו קורא על סף תהום. שמע ישראל אלוהי, אתה כל יכול. נתת לי את חיי, נתת לי הכל. בעיניי דמעה, הלב בוכה בשקט. וכשהלב שותק, הנשמה זועקת. שמע ישראל אלוהי, עכשיו אני לבד. חזק אותי אלוהי, עשה שלא אבחר. הכאב גדול ואין לאן לברוח. עשה שיגמר, כי לא נותר בי כוח.
Ami Hoffman, Betzalel, Hagar Betzalel. Thank you both so much again for being here and sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Now, as we remember the 23,928 fallen Israeli soldiers who have fought to form and protect this country, I'd like to read a poem published in the Israeli Davar magazine in 1947, just as the war for independence was beginning to take its toll. Translated from its original in Hebrew, this is A Silver Platter by Netanyahu. And the land grows still, the red eye of the sky slowly dimming over smoking frontiers as the nation arises, torn at the heart but breathing to receive its miracle. The only miracle as the ceremony draws near. It will rise, standing erect in the moonlight in terror and in joy, when across from it will step out a youth and a lass, and who will slowly march towards the nation dressed in battle gear, dirty, shoes heavy with grime. They ascend the path quietly to change garb, to wipe their brow they have not yet found time. Still bone-weary from days and from nights in the field, full of endless fatigue and unrested, yet the dew of their youth is still seen on their head. Thus they stand at attention, giving no sign of life or death. Then a nation in tears and amazement will ask, "Who are you?" And they will answer quietly, "We are the silver platter on which the Jewish state was given." Thus they will say and fall back in shadows, and the rest will be told in the Chronicles of Israel. Now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be partly cloudy with lows of about 50 degrees Fahrenheit or 9 degrees Celsius, so dress warmly if you plan to go to the ceremonies outside. And then tomorrow, on the eve of Independence Day, you can expect sunnier skies and highs of around 77 degrees Fahrenheit or 25 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.3 shekels to the American dollar and 2.63 shekels to the Canadian dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to visit the all-new and improved ILTV website at iltv.tv and to subscribe to our newsletter for the latest updates while you're there. I'm Aaron Porras. Good night. Iskor. Always remember, and thank you so much for watching.